Now that you've already seen all the regular preterite verbs and when to use them a little bit, now we get to get into the irregulars. There's a whole bunch of irregularities with preterite, but if you follow the patterns, you should be good. There's only a few. There's one small group of verbs that don't follow any pattern, but we'll get to those. First off, you have these 5: caer, creer, leer, oír, poseer. Okay, so look at their stems. Just take their stems, and you have these new endings. The pattern is the I, where you would normally have an I, and the third person is going to change to a Y. Okay, so caí gets an accent. That's a little bit, that's normal, right? Caer for tú would be caíste. Irregular is that you have an accent on that one. So tú caíste. Él, usted, cayó. That I changes to a Y in third person, okay? Nosotros caímos, accent on the I. Vosotros caísteis. And then ellos, ellas, ustedes cayeron with a Y, okay? There are some exceptions, like I noted in the notes. Traer, and then all the compound versions like atraer, and verbs like huir, like seguir, for example, they're not in this group. So ignore those guys. Let's see. We'll go over verbs like huir later. Excuse me. They're like this. They just don't have the accent marks on the endings. So huiste, huimos, huisteis, seguiste, for example. The next group of irregulars, car, gar, zar verbs. Those guys are irregular in the yo form. If you've seen other videos, you might know that the C and the G can have two sounds. The C will sound like a K if it has an A or an O, or let's see, or a U after it, okay? Sacar, actually, you got sacar with the C, and that sounds like a K. And the G will sound like a G if it has an A or an O after it. Otherwise, it sounds like an H. The C will sound like a K, and if it has an E or an I after it, it'll sound like a C or like a letter S. Okay, so let's look at what those are going to be. So a car verb, for example, like sacar, you're going to change the C to a QU in the yo form. Okay, so sacar would be sake. Okay, the reason that you have to do that, again, is sacar ends in an A, right? Or it's an AR verb. With preterite, you do the opposite ending, so you'd have to do sake. That has an E at the end. If you don't change it to QU, it just do SACE, then it would be like sase, and that doesn't sound right. Okay? So you want to keep that sound, that hard k sound, and you do that by changing to a QU. Okay, so sake is how you would do that. Same thing with gar verbs like pagar or jugar. Okay, you add that U in. So pagar would be pague with the U. The next group of irregular preterites are called sandal verbs. Excuse me. The sandal verbs, these are called sandal verbs because they're basically boot verbs that end in IR. Okay? So if you remember boot verbs, you know that there's a stem change. These guys still have a stem change, but it's only on the el, ea, usted form and the ellos, ellas, ustedes form. So for example, servir would be an example. There's only two groups. There's E to I, so you can see it right here, E to I, and then O to U. Okay, and that's it. E to I, O to U, the end. Okay, so servir, for example, normal, stem change in third person. So serví, serviste, irregular, because this changes to I, sirvió. Servimos, that's normal. Servisteis, that's normal. Sirvieron, that changes to an I. Okay? So remember these bottom two on your sandal verbs, that's our IR shoe verbs or boot verbs, these guys have a change. Okay? Let's see. If the verb stem ends in enye, then you need to drop the I of the third person endings. So that would be a verb like reñir, for example. Yo reñí, él riñó, riñeron. Okay, and that is it. That's a lot of irregulars. See if you can practice them here, see how you do. Again, let me know if you have questions.